the AI6 podcast with Joanne Sweeney.
Michael Kane here, and I'm joined on the line now with Joanne Sweeney. How are you doing this morning, Joanne?
Great to be back, Michael.
Pleasure to have you on. And we kind of mentioned this last week about AI transparency because the EU Commission have actually made action on this, haven't they?
Yeah, so if your listeners don't know, if we're using AI in our work in various sectors of society, there is a Article 50 of the AI Act that requires organizations to be transparent about their AI use for obvious reasons, because we need to know what is AI generated and what is not. And in order to help organizations, the European Commission launched a voluntary set of icons that we can use. So they're not mandatory, they're optional, but transparency in terms of AI use is mandatory. So just to make that distinction.
Yeah, so in terms of the kind of mandatory part of the agreement, how does that work when it comes to companies and how will that display for us on social media?
So there's two main areas where organizations are required to declare AI use, and one is around deep fakes, and we've spoken about deep fakes extensively on this segment, and that's where AI generated or manipulated images of or audio or video that appear authentic and that resemble real people, real places, objects, entities, or events, because we now know that AI is so sophisticated that it's actually really difficult to decipher. So if you're producing music, video, the likeness of a person, you have to declare that AI was used. And then the second area is on matters of public interest. So as you will appreciate, like in a job like yours, anything that is done to inform the public about areas of public interest that, of course, need to be factual. If you have used AI, then you have to declare it where it hasn't undergone human intervention or human editorial oversight.
Interesting. And I suppose, the reason the conversation kind of started last week is we were talking about the digital news reports, right? And we were talking about, as Irish consumers, our consumption of news, and this is how the topic came around. Obviously, this is an act done by the EU Commission. But how does this impact things like Grok AI or BlueSeek or any of these things that aren't in the EU? Do they still have to abide by these rules?
Well, they do have to abide by these rules because they're operating in the EU. And in actual fact, one of the other rules that was passed in the European Parliament a couple of weeks ago is that notifying apps are now completely banned. They're going to be completely banned in the EU. And we spoke earlier this year about Grok AI and the capability around that. So yes, so these AI operators do have to comply when they're operating in the EU. Now, compliance is one thing and enforcement is also another thing. So it's not as easy as just setting rules. But yeah, they do have to comply like the rest of us.
Yeah, like you mentioned there with a Grok AI thing, like that was such a horrific thing that was happening kind of February of this year. And you can totally see kind of on the surface of things, you can see how the kind of move here from the EU Commission will stop things like that from happening across the board. We can all agree that that is a good benefit. My next question, how do I phrase this? The Grok AI thing was so huge. How will things like that be enforced with the Act?
So actually, it's a very good question because in Ireland, there are what we call competency agencies who will be responsible for regulating and enforcing compliance with the EU AI Act. And in August of this year, Ireland's National AI Office, they actually have it, it's got an Irish name, Offical AS, I think. That's the Irish for artificial intelligence.
Okay.
That is going to help organizations comply with the Act. So they're going to be doing a lot of awareness building, engaging with organizations. But then you have 17 other regulatory agencies in Ireland whose job it will be to enforce. So, for example, for media, you have Commission Naman. For banks and financial institutions, you have maybe the Central Bank of Ireland or the financial regulator. So absolutely enforcement is coming, Michael, and it is coming this year. So it doesn't matter how small or big your organization or your business is, you need to be aware that we have to now from, I think it's December of this year, they pushed it back from August, we have to start declaring transparency on any AI generated or modified content. That's really important.
On the surface, this sounds overly good, right? And it sounds like it's going to be really great for stopping things like the whole Grok AI situation back in February. But Joanne, because AI is just changing so quickly, do we even know that something like this action from the EU is even going to be up to speed in like a week, month, 6 months' time?
I think your question is well placed, because guess what? There are billions of pieces of content that are produced every week across the EU, maybe even every day. And how, excuse my French, how the hell are these agencies going to have the capability to enforce people not labeling their content? I mean, are they going to do an investigation, right? Mm-hmm. Are members of the public going to report it because they're unhappy? How is it going to work? These are big questions that I'm sure in a practical sense, they're going to be very difficult to implement. So it's a point very well made. And I suppose what the European Commission is doing in releasing these free icons to us, it's actually asking us, will you please be compliant? And to help you be compliant, we're offering you these icons, and we're giving you a guidebook on how you can use them. So there's like 3 icons. You've got the basic icon, the fully AI generated icon, and the partially AI modified icon. So they're inviting us to self-check ourselves. And I guess what I always talk about is AI for good and AI for public good. They're asking those of us that care and that have a moral compass to play ball and to set the standard.
I think that's actually very interesting that you said that, because it is, as the public, we're going to have to kind of be almost the police ourselves. Like even now, YouTube, for example, really struggles with the kind of monitoring of its content and what content goes onto their platform. So it's just difficult because AI is obviously moving so much faster than what YouTube was back in the day. It's hard to see a reality where it can be properly policed in terms of transparency.
It is. And we're 20 odd years into the era of social media. And guess what? We still can't police that. And 20 years on, the response from the UK government and others is to let's ban it for under 16s. Whereas I probably would say, well, actually, if we had proper enforcement around moderation and young people accessing social media, and especially under the age of 13, then maybe we wouldn't have to do it. So social media is a good kind of story and backstory for us to maybe predict where this AI race is going to go. And I agree with you. I think policing and enforcement is going to be extraordinarily difficult, and our competency agencies have a big challenge on their hands.
You mentioned there about social media. Is there anything that governing bodies, the legislation makers, policymakers, is there anything that we can learn from those 20 years of social media? You mentioned the ban recently that happened in the UK for under 16s. Is there anything that we can learn from having social media for 20 years when it comes to the policing or enforcing of AI transparency?
I mean, I'd like to say we should have zero tolerance for things like nudifying apps and anything that's gone rogue. We should, make an example out of them, and, the full force of the law and any related penalties should be applied, because the innovation and the people who are building with AI, they're actually a minority, and they are building it for the majority of the world. So I would encourage, and I'd like to see legislators having zero tolerance approach, and those enforcement agencies really taking bad actors to task very, very quickly, because bad behavior actually sets the standards for others to follow.
Joanne, thank you so much for your time. If any of the listeners want to connect with you, learn more about your podcast, your book, all the things you got going on, where can they connect with you, Joanne?
Yeah, they should go to digitaltraining.ie.
Brilliant stuff. Thank you, Joanne.